From the ONF studios, I'm Robert Neal, and we continue our conversation with Ginger Gilmour, who describes some of the fun about the first 2 weeks of being with David, including a roller skating trip with the band that truly was a trip, thanks to substances provided by Alice Cooper. And although there were a number of good times, the band went through some upheavals, spurred by an embezzling accountant, anxiety and artistic differences within the group, and The Wall, an epic that captured the imagination of fans, but that also proved to be taxing on the band.
So we had this very, very special love at first sight experience over the weekend that they were playing and other groups were playing, and we took them on it was Halloween evening. I was having a roller skating party in Detroit, which they came with us. And David didn't know how to roller skate, and Steve O'Rourke, his manager, looked like Clark Kent with his glasses, was very upright, and David kept on hanging on to him, and Alice Cooper had given them something of a certain nature, so it was interesting watching them roller skate, but not knowing how to. But what you'll love is that on the way into town, they were all in the limousine with my friend driving, and I was in another car. And apparently, they were playing Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. But they hadn't heard the introduction. So they wind up in their high experience thinking, by the time they got to Detroit, that the Martians had invaded.
It happened again, huh?
I know. It was like, but fortunately, by the time they got there, they finished the program. That was, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, and the Martians haven't invaded. To then start roller skating. And I was in red satin hot pants with gold hearts. I was very, very skilled at roller skating because as an American in my growing up days, we had roller skating lessons every weekend. And so I'm jumping and twirling and everything, and David's hanging on to Steve O'Rourke, and if I dare stop, very sweet, and kept calling me a dream on wheels. So the next day he wanted to meet me, and we had a little lunch. And he said, if ever you choose to leave Ann Arbor and everything, here's my parents' phone number in New York City. Give them a call, and we can meet up in the future. So he leaves, and within 3 days, I just decided I have to do this, even if it's only for a short time. And it turned out to be a very long time. So I called his parents, who then passed on the message to him. He was gigging in New Jersey somewhere. And he called me and he said, I'll pick you up at the airport, which he did. And we were there together all through the rest of the tour, which was 2 weeks. And he had his roadie, his name was Scott, make sure that there was a chair on the side, little mixer that was behind the curtains, just next to David's side of the stage. And when he had a guitar break, he'd come over and sit me on his lap and be hugging and things.
That is so cute.
It is. It's so romantic. Hence why there's a story written about it.
Did you enjoy the touring, going from town to town, or I'm wondering in this bliss of love, if you were even aware, of the other surroundings?
Well, I found that their music was just so wonderful as well. Just that space is what I am in my nature, that place, and I know now that I'm born in my own artistic right to express that in this phase of my life. But then it was just the harmony within the possibility of a man and a woman together, and the music that he made just transcended. It was just brought so much joy to me. How could I not? I mean, there were challenges without doubt, because I'd be standing out at the mixer young, and there's a lot of guys around trying to pull young girls.
And let's keep in mind you were a model and very, very attractive.
Exactly. And innocent, like ready to pick off the tree. And it was like, hang on a minute, I'm not one of those girls. I'm in love. There's my man. I love him. I don't need the producers and some of the promoters and stuff that were around were, hello. I'm sorry, I'm not one of them girls. And that was interesting.
So that was kind of an awakening to you, I would think, about other things that go on that you probably weren't familiar with.
No, I wasn't. I was very sheltered as a child, very innocent. My mother didn't let me go out with guys until I was 16.
And then a few years later, you're leaving with a rock star.
She couldn't believe it for a long time.
When you were with Floyd, you saw then the growth of the band. You saw them go from where they were when you first met them to becoming these mega stars. And there was good and bad in that. What were your thoughts as you witnessed it?
It was our life. And it was like, there's a story about a frog. If you put a frog in cold water and slowly heat it up, little by little, they won't jump out when it gets so hot that normally if they jumped in hot water like that, they'd be out of there. It sort of took us over because it was so, you're wrapped in, everybody started having children. It was just a huge organization. When Andrew Warburg embezzled our funds, and they had come back from a tour, thought it was all going to be hunky-dory, would have a year off, their cycle would be to have a year off and create something. Roger was the only one that had something because they had to straighten out their finances.
Explain to me who Andrew Warburg is. He
was our accountant, our financial accountant, and he took a lot of people and split from the country. And so then we had a few years of lots of accountants upstairs above Britannia Row trying to sort everything out. We didn't know what was going to happen. But earlier on in that process, it started when Dark Side of the Moon had the single money.
Yeah.
Suddenly their fame just skyrocketed, and they had to be in large auditoriums and to cater for it. Well, Roger started to feel alienated. His angst started to really build, and we were so involved with the whole journey and this financial need to support our families and everything that ran the organization. It just took over, and little by little, you're just stuck. You're in that pool of water like a frog that's getting hotter, and how do you get out of something like that? The organization got so big, and also it's their passion, their love. But little by little, Roger's anxiety just took over so much to where David and Rick were having a very hard time to express what they really were, and it started affecting all the home lives. Mm. But it was so subtle at first. It permeated in, and with the wall, it got really intense there.
But it sounds like there was chaos, and it's funny, you use the word organization. You don't even refer to it as a band at that point. You call it the organization.
Well, that's the business side, and then the band itself was an organism. It really was more of an organism than an organization. But to run that business side of thing was huge.
Ginger remembers a surreal moment in 1975, on the day she and David secretly married. It was the same day the band had completed work on the album Wish You Were Here, which included the song Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, a tribute to former member Syd Barrett, whose mental breakdown forced him to leave the band in 1968. And that's when Gilmour, who had joined the band a year earlier, replaced Barrett.
But Floyd didn't know that we were getting married, It was a surprise. They had all just flown back from one of their American tours, and David had approached me in the airport with lots of love and hugs, and on the ride home he asked me to marry him. So he got all that together. There's a great story about it, how neither of us had the ring. You'd think that we didn't know what finger.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a wonderful story. And the kids just chuckle about it every time. It is just so sweet. We're so unprepared. And so we go down to Abbey Road Studios and in Bliss of love and everything, and get there, and Roger comes up to Dave and says, Dave, could you come to the front of the mixer, please? And Abbey Road Studios #1 has a little room that you walk into with some of the engineer things, and then there's the huge mixing table with a big leather couch in front of it with the glass window, and all the instruments are on the other side. And when he went to see, he says, I need you to look at this guy that's sitting on the sofa. And it was Sid. He was all pear-shaped, bold, just like in the Wall film. And
he had left the group, what, a number of years before that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's what's weird is David could be in the group for 12 years, for 15 years, for 20 years, and they still talk about Sid Barrett. And, he was only there for a couple of years. He did see Emily play, and I'm really not up on Sid Barrett. Even after all these years, I don't know why, but I think I was just too passionate about my husband to even... Sid really got in a bad way. There was one tour, apparently, that he came to America and took some acid. He was big on acid, apparently, and he had a really bad trip that he never came off of.
One of Pink Floyd's most hailed triumphs was also one of the band's most divisive projects. The Wall, which was a concept album that came from Waters, was a critical success. But during the recording, it was agreed that keyboardist Richard Wright would leave the group. A subsequent concert tour saw the relations of the other band members reach an all-time low. Meanwhile, Ginger says the subject matter of The Wall was so dark that it took a toll on David, who was anxious to work on new material, and disharmony between David and Waters began to grow.
When The Wall finally got to the film, David was like, I'm really finding this difficult. I can't do this anymore. And he wasn't really... Steve O'Rourke pleaded with him because Roger and Alan Parker, the director, were having a really difficult time. So Steve asked Dave, please go in and be the mediator. So that's what he did, but it was really difficult because as much as we think it's incredible, the production of The Wall, honestly, it's about the worst of what any of us ever feel now. And when I think of every night listening to that, and the volume was so loud and everything, the visuals were off the scale and was incredible for a rock and roll group to achieve. But really, the subject matter was really hard going. And it was like the audience was hypnotized. And then David would be up on that wall playing Comfortably Numb, and it was like he had his moment, and he took us into hope. That beyond all the worst, there's this artist called Goya, Spanish artist Goya, and his role was to depict and wake up humanity by showing them the worst of what we are and shock them. And I think that, in a way, that's what The Wall was doing. I didn't realize it entirely at the time because we were just so entangled in the complexity of the difficulty of our financial life, and living with that music tear down the wall, screaming at you all the time, every day. It's like you have to build a wall to deal with it. And I realized when I was writing this book that I was tearing down my wall that I had put up as a defense on a subtle plane to deal with everything we were having to deal with then.
Yeah, you know what you say in the book, I've been given an opportunity to let go of the pain that closed my heart during those years of conflict within the band. So it sounds like the book was a very healing process for you.
Very definitely. And it was incredible. I mean, when I had to read, it was easy to live through the beginning. And then as it slowly changed, and I was, by the point in my life that I started to write this book, I had this vision about the importance of beauty and that any art should uplift, but it also has to be true. And quite frankly, I had a revelation that told me, Ginger, you have to write this book, Share Your Journey of Love. And it's from a normal dream of Prince Charming to finally touch the highest of love that actually makes you happy in life beyond everything, all the addictions and the needs and the treadmill and all that stuff. I see that I had to share my journey that so many people wish they had.
Yeah.
Then the crises of that, not that it's a tell-all, but it had to be, people would not, they're taken into the love experience and almost they live my dream. To the love of my children and the wonderful stories of parenthood and life and all the dreams people wish you could have, to then little by little the frogs in hotter water and hotter water, and that dream is getting harder and harder to live and hold on to, and it's disappearing, and the heartache. And when I was going to that moment, how can I relate those experiences with the idea that it's breaking through? Everything that hurts us is an opportunity to break through or to choose to make it a breakdown. And I really believe that everything that happens, negative or positive, is all there to help us live the greatness of what we are. And since when I started writing the book, I had reached that point of realization. I knew that it was my sole purpose, that I was born to have experienced all that and share it so that every one of us would know the truth, that a human being can come from all of that to then go through the crises and come out and find joy that cannot be taken away by anything.
That concludes the second part of our conversation with Ginger Gilmour and her book Memoirs of the Bright Side of the Moon. In our third and final segment, we'll talk a bit more about the Floyd and also focus on Ginger's career as an artist and the inspired nature of her works. We'll also talk about Ginger and David's son Matthew, who has his first album out, and we'll hear a bit of music from him.